Welcome to the Lifestyle Chase. This podcast features high performers who have found a way to live their best life while balancing their health, wellness, friends, and family. Proudly hosted by me, Chris Little. Without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to episode 22 of the Lifestyle Chase with the one and only Ryan Jones. How are you doing today?
Yeah, not bad. Doing pretty good. Weather's pretty Vancouver-like over here today, so a little gloomy and gray, but all in all, not too shabby.
Sweet. So take us through your day today. How did it unfold?
Yeah, it's funny, when I was listening to your other podcast and you were asking all your guests the questions, I was actually amazed that they were able to put together a daily routine, because my life is broken up into kind of three different little mini lives, I guess. You got your out of season, your in season, and your in season day off. So I guess first my in season today was a day off, and it was my son's birthday actually yesterday. So we had a birthday party for him this morning. This afternoon. So he got dropped off at school this morning, and then I did a little shopping with my mom, who flew over a couple days ago. Picked him up, went to a little jungle gym, chased 8 to 10 kids around, and now we just come home. We try to get them to relax after a bunch of cake and sweets and juice, and get them down for bed usually around 7:30, 8. And that's my wife and I's kind of quiet time. That's our time that we take to enjoy each other and try to get back to a normal equilibrium.
Totally. How about let's go through a day where you're playing a game in the day or whatever. Like, how does that day play out? Do you have like a pre-game routine? Do you wake up a certain way?
Yeah, for me, it's sleep as long as I can. I've my wife's an absolute angel, so she wakes up with the boys on most days. It's a little different here where we skate at 9:15 in the morning, so I'm usually up about the same time as them. We get to the arena at about, I'd say 8, and then it's just coffee with the guys, try to solve a few world problems while we're waiting for pregame skate. Go out for about 30 minutes, get a sweat on. And by the way, pregame skate it's the most ridiculous old school routine ever. It needs to be just gotten rid of. But go out for 30 minutes just to putz around, come off, solve a few more world problems, and then it's a pregame meal with a few guys, back for nap. I usually try to do somewhere between an hour and 2 hours, kind of depending on how my sleep was the night before. Then I'm up, I grab a bowl of Lucky Charms, just because I always have. Head to the rink, try to get there about 2.5, 3 hours early. And it's tape and sticks, mixing your drinks, your supplements together for the game. A little 2-touch soccer, and then getting after it.
Nice. So as a kid, what was growing up and playing hockey and balancing that with life like?
Well, it's always interesting because back, I don't want to say back in the day. I'm not that old. I didn't grow up that long ago, but I guess just in the way that I was brought up, hockey wasn't kind of the end all be all for me. I loved it. I played it a lot. I always was doing the road hockey and other stuff, but my parents were always huge advocates of doing other sports. I grew up, my mom's a big gymnast, so I grew up in gymnastics until I was probably 6 or 7, playing soccer, playing baseball. That didn't last long. Baseball was too boring. I played volleyball until I was 19. And so it was, yeah, it was kind of playing everything. And I think for me, that was huge because just the motor skill learning that you get with, being kind of a multi-sport kid, it's so advantageous compared to nowadays. You get kids that are just hockey players and that's it. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You learn how to skate and that's it. Obviously, 1 out of every million players is going to be Connor McDavid, but there's a lot of kids that specialized and don't have a whole lot to fall back on.
That's so true. When you were younger, did you ever see yourself being able to play in the NHL? Was that like just, it was do or die, or was it just like a happy occurrence?
It's weird because people have asked me that kind of all along, and I try to look back, and my parents always told me that when people asked, I would say, I'm going to play in the NHL or whatever, but I don't specifically remember that being my only goal when I was younger. I knew from a fairly young age that I wanted to go to university. So the major junior route for me was something that I didn't really pursue. And I kind of got fascinated with the American college game and everything around it. So that was kind of my first goal, and it took a little bit longer than most kids. Most kids are kind of going to school at 18, and I was, the Taco Bell drive-through boy at 18. So kind of just, I took the long route to get there, but eventually it worked out, and I don't know, it just kind of all the stars aligned for me to be able to play in the NHL and to get to do what I do, and it was kind of weird looking back, but everything just kind of fell together.
And so, like, you went to school while you're ramping up to get to the NHL, right? So, like, do you have like a degree or?
Yep. So I went to school. I graduated with a kinesiology degree and a business management minor. So I went all 4 years, and then I came out of Miami University, signed with Minnesota, traded to Nashville.
Yeah. But that's like, I like that approach.
Yeah, so
that's like the more sustainable way of having a career, because you never know what'll happen, and we'll allude to that later, obviously. But it's such a responsible way to progress through a professional sports career.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that at least with Canadians, when you have this major junior opportunity, there's such a push for kids to, at 16 and 17, just, okay, are you going to play hockey or are you not going to play hockey? There's no, we don't, as Canadians, allow kids to mature enough to allow them to make an educated decision. And you know how you were, and I know how I was. At 16, somebody's like, okay, do you want to play hockey? Heck yeah, I want to play hockey, and then you get to 19 or 20 and somebody's like, well, do you want to get an education that might set you up at the same time? It's like, well, it's too late. For me, fortunately, for some reason, that decision was kind of made for me fairly early, and I was fortunate enough. I don't know what percentage of players that play in the NHL have a degree, but I would say it's fairly small.
Yeah. And
when I chose kinesiology, it was something I was like, I want to know what's going on with my body. If I do get hurt, if something is going on, I want to have some basic knowledge of how I might be able to better help myself without, at least at first, having to seek someone to do that for me.
Yeah. Have you had moments where that kinesiology background did help you in your career? Like, just profound moments like, holy shit, I'm glad I did that.
Yeah. There's been a few things where, like, there's stuff going on and you're like, oh man, this is exactly what's going on. Okay, I know, and I might be able to help this out a little bit here, but most of the time it comes up when you're, like I said, solving world problems in the locker room, and someone's like, oh, this is why this is happening. And you're like, well, actually,
That's awesome.
The other day we had a debate there. Yeah, there was a guy at the back of the bus. We were on the way to a game, and it was maybe a 2-hour bus ride, and the game was, let's say, at 4 o'clock. So at noon, he was sitting in the back and he was just mowing a steak. And he's one of those guys, he's never wrong. And he was like, oh yeah, this is the best thing you can do. It's like, it's going to give me energy. And I'm like, you're so full of it. You don't even know how long that thing's going to sit in your stomach for? He's like, it's only there for like an hour and then it's gone. I'm like, dude, do you want an education right now? Because I'll give you one. He's like, well, just because you read it one time doesn't mean you're right. I'm like, oh, what a way to go through life, Just because you read it somewhere doesn't mean it's right. So yeah, we went through it, and I'm like, all right, okay, here, I'll Google it just to show you. He's like, oh man, wow. So it's kind of funny, just to be able to lean back on that.
Totally. And then with like your other schooling, can you see yourself benefiting from that in the future, or have you benefited from that already? Yeah,
that's I think about 4 or 5 years ago, kind of when the market took a little bit of a turn. I was looking at my accounts like everybody else, and I'm like, oh man, this sucks. So I started talking to some friends, and they brought up some real estate stuff. And so 5 years ago, I dipped the toe into real estate, and once I put my toe in, I kind of went in head first. So my wife and I have accumulated some real estate in Minneapolis, northeast Minneapolis, and that's kind of something that I'm going to pursue when things are all said and done, and whether that pulls me away from, what my degree is in is yet to be seen, but I probably am not going to be using my kinesiology degree too much other than to prove I'm right in a few arguments here or there.
It counts.
Yeah, exactly. Every time you can tick one off you're right, it's a bonus, right?
Yeah. So growing up, or actually no, I'll switch gears here. Getting into the NHL, what were 3 things that describe that moment when you knew that you were going to be playing the big show?
Oh, wow. It's a tough question. Yeah, I think, first was obviously happiness. Not just for me, but for the people who would sacrificed a lot for me to be able to play hockey. My family, my pops, he drove an hour and a half back and forth to work when I was younger, and that was all basically just so I could continue to play. So there was a satisfaction of being able to get to call him and tell him, and call my mom and call my brother and be able to tell them that I'd made the team. And then there was just that huge relief that everything that you had worked for and everything that you had sacrificed and put into trying to get to that ultimate goal just coming to fruition. And that was probably the biggest emotion, was just almost a sigh of relief that, all right, let's just build from here. But yeah, it's really hard to describe it. It was pretty sweet, I'll say that.
Yeah, and that exemplifies it pretty good. So you have one brother and your parents? Like that's
Yep.
Your family?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. Older brother.
So this next question for you, you're going to describe your parents and then your brother, each one of them one at a time, and describe 3 qualities that you really admire about them.
Okay. Well, we'll start, I guess, with my pop, since I already talked about him. For me, the biggest thing from him is his selflessness. My parents split when I was 7, and my mom ended up out in British Columbia. So for him, from that point on, everything that he did was for my brother and I. And to see what he sacrificed now that I'm older and I'm able to look back and think, oh man, like my father didn't get to experience this because, he was raising 2 kids by himself. That's a big eye opener, and something that at the time I wish I appreciated a little more so that I could tell him. But I try to remind him as much as I possibly can without swelling his head too much. The other thing about him is how hardworking he is. I just remember talking to him, and he has his passions, his gardening and stuff like that. And that freaking guy, he would just he wouldn't stop until it was done. The gardening, the pool, everything that he did was just 100% or nothing. And he used to always say that to my brother and I. It was just like, if you're going to do something, just do it to your full ability. At least then you can look back at it and say, all right, I gave it my all. If I didn't accomplish it, well, then I can learn from there. If I do accomplish it, then I'm fulfilling something. So did I get 2 or 3 there? No, 2. And then the other one, and I always think of this as my dad, is his chivalry. He's a guy, he's so polite. He's always opening doors for women. He's a guy who walks around the car, has to open the door. He's pulling chairs out, and he's so old school when it comes to that. And I specifically remember seeing this stuff, watching him as a kid, and it's cool because it's rubbed off on me to a certain extent. It's almost like a lost art nowadays, and he was he was a pretty sweet dude.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then I guess for my mom was a police officer in my hometown, and she's tiny. She's like 5'3", and I always saw my mom as this little badass. She was tackling these like grown men. She's, taking on all these people, and she's just a half-bite little person, and at the same time, she's a marathon runner. And so, if for her, just like, I'm going to make up a word, her badassedness, and then her commitment and her hard work to her passions too. Like her marathon running is something that she's been passionate about forever. And it's, for me to look at that, it's the little lessons that you learn just from watching your parents. That was definitely, one that I picked up from her. And then the other thing was just seeing how small she was and everything that she accomplished. Like her size doesn't define her in anything. She'll go into the gym and she is lifting like she's 500 pounds. She doesn't care. If you get in her way, she's like, get out of my way, and so she's just a determined person. I think I got 3 for her.
Yeah, sounds
There's
great.
Lots for my parents, so I'd try to keep it as yeah. And then there's my brother. I mean, I guess for him, it's probably the 3 things that I learned not to do. But he made me who I am. And I didn't quite appreciate what I had in him until, again, I got a little bit older. Because him and I just used to kick the crap out of each other. It was always me trying to keep up to him because he was the bigger brother, at least for the first 12 years of our life. He was the big kid. I was a small kid. And then I hit a growth spurt and he kind of stayed small and it switched. But that didn't stop him from kicking the crap out of me all the time. He's somebody I wasn't. I was close in that we would play together, but then when we hit that age when you got to decide who your friends were, it was like him and I didn't want anything to do with each other. So from a side, I could tell that I had his protection from the older kid, maybe in high school. But we were kind of done with each other from, say, 13 to 19. And then when he left for university, I think that's when we realized how close we really were. And we're absolutely best friends. We talk 2-3 times a week, just about everything. But the three qualities that I admire from him, his loyalty, especially with his family. He's probably the most loyal person that I know. He buys everybody from fifth cousins to nephews to whatever. Everybody gets a birthday present just because he wants them to know that he loves them, and he wants them to know that, like, he doesn't forget them. That's just. Whereas I'm, on the other hand, like, I got some cousins that I haven't talked to that I was close to when I was young, and it's just because I've grown apart from him in a sense, where he just doesn't allow that to happen. And the other thing is, he is so smart. He's a computer science guy. He works for the Toronto Star in their mobile development, and he's 100 times smarter than I'll ever be. He's talking computer code and C++ stuff, and I'm like, dude, I got no idea what you're talking about. Like, I think the number sign is a hashtag now. And I said that to him the other day. He's like, you're an idiot. I'm like, what do you mean? Isn't that what nobody uses a number sign other than as a hashtag, right?
So true.
So, and I guess the other thing from him is just his like spontaneity. He'll call and he'll be like, all right, I kind of want to come to Germany next week, and he'll just up and do it. You know, he's created a job for himself, and which allows him, but also, you know, that takes a little bit of guts to be able to do that. I'm more of a, like, kind of have to schedule everything and set things up, whereas he's just ready to up and go. Whatever he thinks is fun, he's ready.
That's awesome. The second part of this is thinking about yourself and, like, how you'll raise your offspring. What are 3 qualities that you would take from, like, your parents and your brother and implement into your kid's life?
Man, that's like, we're getting deep here.
Damn right.
Yeah. I guess, you know, from my dad, I would love for them to just see and grow up and have that sort of that sacrifice in them, where they understand from as early of an age as possible that not everything is about them. And that's hard. Like, I got a 5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, and, you know, it's hard to tell them, hey, listen, you know, like, with my older guy's birthday today, my young guy's like, well, Daddy, Santa didn't bring me presents today. It's like, all right, dude, well, 1, it's not Christmas. 2, it's not your birthday. Today is about your brother. But just for them to be able to understand, you know, like, to make other people happy and to sacrifice for other people and do things for other people to allow them to further, to be able to accomplish more, is as satisfying as being able to do it yourself. And that's one thing. Again, I wish I would have learned that from my dad at an earlier age. You know, from my mom, other than her sick aerobic capacity, you know, like, hopefully they get her what I call badassedness, just this, you know, don't let anything stop you. If you want something, do it. It's not because you're small. It's not because this person is, you know, bigger, better, whatever. Go through them. Just find a way to get it done and do it. And then I guess, you know, from my brother, his loyalty. to me, that's a characteristic that I think as a family we all have, but he just has it to that other level. And if they could have that and just be loyal to their family and the people that are surrounding them, those three I think would be a great at least base for them to be solid human beings.
I like those. Those are good answers. We're gonna back out of the rabbit hole a little bit here. Go and talk about Oilers a bit now. And I did a bit of a survey on some of the people that follow me on Instagram and just asking what they would want to know from you. And most of the questions were like typical questions that a person would ask a player that moved to Europe. So I'm gonna ask some of the more interesting ones. When you're giving autographs, do you still ask for cookies or hugs?
Oh, I did kind of give that up. It's when I came over here, the autographs went down to probably 1% of what they were back home. So, I don't know. If I was over here, I'd probably have to ask for schnitzel and hugs. You don't see too many cookies around, and I don't know how bad I want to eat leftover schnitzel. But no, I dropped that. But man, that was a good reminder. I forgot about that. That was a good time of my life, getting cookies for autographs.
Well, it's neat. I have access to a lot of your biggest fans, and like even myself, like when I was following the Oilers, when you were playing for them, you were my favorite one. It was just your ability to relate to your fans. And honestly, when people interviewed you, I was always laughing. It was just like, this person is real. Whereas like you get some of the top draft picks and they're full of themselves, and nobody wants that.
Yeah, that was one thing. Like I don't know where I got it from, and I probably got it from my parents, and it was just the acknowledgement that everybody is human and everybody has the same basic wants and whatever. And just because I was able to accomplish getting to the NHL doesn't make me better by any means than any other person in the world. I just, and I to a degree, I get annoyed talking hockey with people who are like, oh yeah, I was supposed to be in the NHL, but I rolled my ankle and the coach hates me. I'm like, yeah, like that's 99% of Canadians. But at the same time, there's a certain degree of that's the truth. And in my education and stuff, you learn about this self-fulfilling prophecy and all that stuff. And you're like, man, what if I was just on the right side of that prophecy? What if I was just the kid who was getting the extra attention and not necessarily the most skilled kid? What if Joe Smith was supposed to be that kid, or he was a better hockey player? He could be here and I could be a fan. So it's just, I always put myself in that situation. I was like, interact with people like you're equals because you are.
That's a good rule to have. I think that's something that I can really relate to. Like, just be a human being.
Yeah, exactly. Like nothing. And there's a lot of really, really good people in the NHL that I've come across, but there are some jackasses too, and that's hard. And those jackasses give kind of the majority of guys a bad name. So I think for me, it was really important just to be relatable, because, like I said, you're maybe one coach away from not being there.
Yeah. So one of my cousin-in-laws still has your jersey, so he was pretty pumped about you. And I know quite a few people are still wearing your jersey at Rogers Place today. Like, you'll go to a game today, and you'll see some Jones 28 jerseys. What was your favorite thing about living in Edmonton and playing for the Oilers?
Oh, that's tough. That's tough. There are so many things. For me, I think Edmonton allowed me to combine a lot of my passions while living in one place. I'm a big outdoors guy. So for me to be able to in my spare time. I didn't have any kids at the time to go sit in a deer stand and just enjoy that peace and quiet with no expectations and no stress. That was huge. If I didn't have that at that point in my life, I don't know how things would have turned out. Obviously, the hockey was an insane benefit of living in Edmonton. There isn't much for me to complain about in my time there. That's for sure. But I would have to say the best part was just being able to combine a lot of stuff that I loved, having it all in Edmonton.
Yeah, and that's a good answer, and it's a perfect segue because my oldest brother, he actually hunts quite a bit, and like when we would discuss like which player's jersey would you get kind of thing, and he was always, I could go for a Jones jersey. He hunts. I think he's good shit. So what are 5 things that you enjoy thoroughly about going hunting? Like what are like the things that are non-negotiables, things that really mean a lot to you?
That peace and quiet, that's the biggest thing. I sat in the stand a lot of hours and didn't see animals and was just happy to be there. I'd be lying if I said that the expectations and the stress of playing in Edmonton didn't weigh heavy on me at times, and that was something that allowed me to kind of be away from it. Being able to provide for your family, and it sounds weird in the time that we're in to say that, because you can go to the grocery store and you can buy your family whatever you want, but knowing that if something was to happen and that wasn't there, that I would be able to provide. The art of processing, I don't want to sound like Dexter here, but it's almost like an art to be able to take a deer that you harvested and hand your friend a pack of deer jerky. He's like, "Oh dude, who did that?" And you're like, "Homie, I did that. Like I made that. I threw it on the smoker or whatever." They're, "Damn, that's good." Like that's pretty satisfying to hear that. The camaraderie that comes with hunting, that Steve McIntyre was a guy that I hunted with quite a bit. Louis DeBrusque, I hunted with a lot. My relationship with Louis developed out of hunting, and that's something that I cherish a lot. Louis a guy that I talk to still to this day, and I love the conversations that we have. Louis is a down-to-earth guy. He's always got me laughing. There's the guys that I met up in northern Edmonton. Sorry, one sec. My 5-year-old's coming to give me a hug. I love you. The guys that I met in northern Edmonton that I still talk about this day, those are lifelong friendships that I made through hunting. Did I get 5?
You're close enough. If that's all you got, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. I feel like I combined everything into one. And I guess for me, the other thing is, and again, not to be too Dexter-like, but to be intelligent and strategic enough to be able to harvest an animal in their own environment. A lot goes into it, and I understand people on the other side that are, let's say, against hunting. I can understand that, and I respect their opinion for sure. But for me to look at a map of a property of land and be like, oh man, there's 300 acres. Like, where am I going to sit? Where the hell are these deer going to go? And when a plan kind of comes together, it's a great feeling.
That's awesome. Those are really good answers. And you even did another awesome segue. When it comes to playing in Edmonton, what's the hardest part, particularly when it comes to media coverage?
Yeah, I think it's you just said it's the media coverage, and it's the fan pressure. I'm not a person at any point before being in Edmonton that would have said that I allowed people's opinions to affect the way that I feel. And then, I started getting into Twitter. I thought it was another way for me to interact with fans, another way for me to be kind of that down-to-earth guy that I like to be. And for every 5 positive comments, you'd get 5 that were like, Jones, you suck, you're a piece of shit. And it's just like, it's hard to read through that, to get to the positive ones, to interact with the positive fans without having that affect you to some degree. And by the time that I left Edmonton and had deleted Twitter, it was too much for me. I couldn't handle it anymore. And I'm actually glad that I acknowledged that and got rid of Twitter. I thought it would be hard, but looking back, it's probably the best decision that I ever made, was to get rid of Twitter and not allow those people to have an impact on my emotional state.
And that's profound, because I don't think anybody's ever actually called out the fact that hockey players, they're professionals, they get paid a lot, but they're still human beings, and if you talk enough trash to them, that's going to affect the outcome of their play.
For sure. And you have guys like, for example, that Paul Bissonnette, guys who can handle that and just say, hey, F you, look at your nose. Hey, F you. I checked out your girlfriend. She's ugly. She's a 2. Well, that's not me. I'm not, somebody says something to me, I'm not going to go and dig into their history to try to belittle them more. I do think the dehumanization of athletes in general is something it goes on all the time, and it's sad. People talk about this cyberbullying now. It happens on a huge scale all the time to professional athletes, and you're expected to look at it and just look past it. And I don't want to be this soft guy to say it, but if I went to anybody's life and 5,000 times a day just was in their ear and was like, hey, you're a piece of shit. Hey, what you just did was stupid. Hey, by the way, this young guy is better than you. It would have an impact on their life. No matter who you are, how mentally strong you are, it just does. And it's sad that at times it takes something so drastic for people to realize that athletes, and I'll just say hockey players, for the whole grand scheme as athletes, for hockey players to be human, for a hockey player to get cancer or something like Davidson, when I was there, people are like, shit, this guy's human. He's got cancer. He's dealing with human stuff. Oh shit, this guy's wife's going through something, and then you have people that are like, screw it. I don't care that his wife's, just lost her kid or whatever. He's got to play. He's got to score. He's got to do whatever. It's like, it's just sad that has to happen for people to take a step back and be like, damn, these guys, they're humans too.
I agree, totally. Has there ever been a time where a fan that was at a game, could you hear the fan? Did that affect you, or is it mostly the social media and all that stuff?
No, mostly the social media. I can't think of a single time where I heard something when I was on the ice or in the stands or whatever that affected me in that moment. Even walking back to the dressing room at the old Rexall, where there were people in the tunnel there. I was fortunate that to be fairly well liked, that nobody said anything there. But out when you're out in the city and stuff like that, people got no shame and coming up and saying, hey, this is how you should run the power play. Hey, is everything okay with you? You're not playing great. It's kind of like, screw off, man. I'm trying to have dinner here with my wife. I don't need to be degraded while I'm out here.
People are pretty messed up.
That did. Oh yeah, and it's you know what they say about opinions, right? So and they're for the most part, people are awesome. 99% of Edmonton fans are great, but there are that I'm not even going to say that. I would say Canadian cities, 90% of fans are great. You have 10% of fans that are maybe they're the people who think that they should have made it and they're blowing out your candle to try to make theirs brighter. I don't know, but it's real. Like it has an impact on guys, and I guarantee that there's guys in Edmonton's lineup, Vancouver, Ottawa, Toronto. There's guys who are dealing with it right now.
Well, and you can even transfer that to any career. Like for myself, the fitness industry is pretty competitive. Like for people just in anything where you have to be at the top to sort of make a living of it, people are going to try to cut other people down.
Oh, for sure, and that's one thing that like I I will never live my life like that. And if I ever hear one of my kids do that, that's like instant life lesson. Um, if somebody has to, and I use the candle reference, but if somebody has to put other people down to make themselves feel better, that person just isn't worth the time for me.
Agreed.
And I understand critiquing people and constructive criticism's awesome. I mean, how do you learn? How do you get better without constructive criticism? But there is a definitive line between putting somebody down for the sake of making yourself look better and putting somebody down or critiquing them to build them up. That's very, very evident. And yeah, I that's one of my life pet peeves is people who do that.
Yeah. So as far as obstacles go, what was the toughest part about the lockout for you?
Probably my injury,
Yeah.
my eye injury, which has been fairly well documented. For the most part, the lockout for me was cool. I had some offers to go play in Russia and to play elsewhere, but my wife was pregnant with my first child at the time. I didn't really want to leave her, and I wasn't really sure at the timing of when the lockout would be done, nor was anybody. But I got to hunt a lot. I got to be kind of a normal person in Edmonton at a time when normally I wouldn't be going out on the too much. So I loved it. And then when we hit December and there was no end in sight, my wife and I decided to go back to Minnesota. It was getting pretty chilly in Edmonton, and our families were starting to plan Christmas. So we decided to head back to Minnesota, and I was skating with a really, really awesome group of NHL guys at the time with phenomenal skates and training and all that. And then New Year's Eve I took the puck to the eye in training, and that kind of sent the career in a different direction. But yeah, if I would have just thrown a visor on, yeah, if I would have just worn a visor, who knows? But you can't look back on that stuff.
But it's a good lesson. Like as much as it sucks to be giving out lessons to people, that it speaks to the importance of, hey, like throw your ego to the side, put on a visor, because like fluky shit happens.
Yeah, exactly. I look back now and I'm just like, man, what was I not wearing a visor for in the first place? I didn't fight much until after the accident, and the only reason I was fighting was to try to stay in the NHL. I had maybe 4 fights before that, and the guys that I was fighting all had visors on anyway. So who am I trying to prove that I'm tough to? Was it to look cool? I don't know. Was it superstitious because I was having good years with it off? Maybe, but yeah, it was dumb. And now I'm glad that rule's in. It's so much better. These guys can hopefully avoid what I went through. But at the same time, that injury led to some other awesome opportunities, like coming over here. And as weird as it is to say, looking back, I wouldn't change it. I mean, it's made me who I am. It's made my family who we are, and who knows, if that accident didn't happen, something else crazy might have happened. So in the grand scheme of things, I'm glad that it was something on that scale instead of whatever else it could have been.
Agreed. And like, I think what I look for in a guest is like somebody that can actually just roll with the punches. Because shit's gonna happen to people. Like, people are gonna have things that happen to them that's tough to work with. And to have like these coping strategies or positive attitudes to actually move forward is empowering for us, makes us better people.
Oh yeah, exactly. Adaptability is probably one of the best characteristics a person can have, because you can lay out a plan as black and white and up like every minute that you possibly can. Is There's going to be a wrench thrown in there at some point, and if you can't adapt, you're screwed. And I mean, that's all aspects of life. Could you imagine your line of work, you have a workout routine plan, all of a sudden you have a client come in and they're like, oh man, you want to know what, like I got a little bit of a sore back, and you're like, well damn, my whole work, you might as well go home. I can't train you. You got a sore back. This was your plan. You were going to squat and lunge and do everything today. You can't do that with your back. Just go home. By the way, you got to pay me. You wouldn't have a job very long.
No. With being a dad, did that role come fairly easily to you?
Oh, I'd love to say, yeah, it was just super easy, and being a parent's the easiest thing in the world. But I mean, any parent, any dad knows that it's a massive transition. And it's cliche to say, but having kids really was the greatest thing that ever happened. I mean, I lost a lot of my own free time, but also it taught me that selflessness. I went through life the first, I don't know, when I had my son, I went through 28, 29 years of my life worrying about one person, and really that's kind of what a lot of people do. You're like, hey, I got to keep myself alive, at the same time you're trying to accomplish your goals, and they're your goals and stuff like that. Then all of a sudden you have a kid and you're like, oh man, I'm not worried about myself. Every decision that you make, you're like, okay, I got to do this. Oh, but how does that affect my kid? So that took a little bit of getting used to, was that now I'm trying to keep this creature alive, which isn't an easy task, especially when you add a second one. But yeah, I watched people. I talked to people. There were guys on the team who had kids. I paid attention to their relationships, what I liked about how they parented, maybe what I didn't like, and I tried to put that into my own style of parenting. And at the same time, I mentioned earlier, like, my wife she's a saint. So she does 80% of the parenting just because of the schedule I have. And she made the transition a lot easier than I'm sure it would have been by myself.
That's awesome. When you're communicating with German players on the team, like, is that pretty tough? Like, have you picked up on some German? What do you do to, like, get your message across if they don't have much for English?
They're all English.
Oh, okay.
The locker room's English. We've had an English coach up until we just got this Czech coach. But I would say that I'm 70% fluent German. I've been here 5 years now, so I understand a lot. I need a beer or two to really open up and start talking. But as far as hockey and everything goes, I can get along really well.
Perfect.
But if like I said, they're English. They're all 100% fluent in English.
Well, that works out. And, like, oftentimes we lose sight of the fact that so many other countries actually speak way more languages than we do in North America.
Oh yeah, could you imagine if if Alberta had a language, BC had a language, Saskatchewan had a language, and you were like, oh shit, I gotta travel like or these people they're always interacting. Well, you pick up on their language. That's what it's like over here. You know, you got Germany, you got France, you have Poland, you have Sweden, Norway, all these countries. Like, you can hit a driver to another country.
Yeah, that makes
Maybe
sense.
not me. I would hit the one that's way off to the right, but some people could hit a driver there.
Totally. You have some like former Oilers playing with you.
Yeah, we have Corey Potter. Yep.
What's it like playing with him?
It's cool. You know, Potsy and I were really close. We had kind of our group of 4 guys. There was Potsy, Jeff Petrie, Devin Dubinick, and myself. And at the time, we were all guys that were kind of in the same situation. We weren't the older guys that had been there through that Cup Finals run, and we weren't these young superstars that were in there. We were kind of these tweener guys, and we all kind of grasped onto each other. And when Potsy was looking to make the transition, I was in his ear as much as I possibly could about coming over here. And he's got a daughter that's a year older than my oldest, and he's got another daughter that's a year older than my youngest, and our wives are best friends. So it was just an awesome transition for him to come over here. And we're neighbors, and we hang out all the time, and him and I probably have a few too many beers and try to solve too many world problems for our own intelligence, but it's great to have him here. That's and then awesome. I forgot we have Pinzado too, who spent a little bit of time in Edmonton. He's unfortunately been hurt a bunch this year and hasn't been around the group as much as he would probably like, but he's a solid cat. He's tough as nails. Scares the shit out of a lot of German guys in this league, that's for sure.
So what was it like to have like the boys from Edmonton come for that exhibition game?
It was cool. It was really cool. You know, I think there was more put into it as far as me playing the Oilers than needed to be. I think just being able to have an NHL team over here competing. We had that German connection with Reeder and Draisaitl. Yeah, it was awesome. I got to see the Nuge again, who was a kid that lived with me when he was a rookie, and he's obviously gone a long way. And the trainers and medical staff are all guys that were there when I was there. So it was cool to get them here, have them see kind of what I'm going through on a daily basis, and yeah, just get to see those guys in person again. It was awesome. We shared a lot of old memories, and at least we put up a fight in that game. If I just could have scored, it maybe have been a different story. But I think the outcome was the absolute best that it could have been, because you don't want a German team beating an NHL team, because it's not good for anybody. NHL teams are obviously of higher quality. So you never want people being like, oh, the German league is as good because the Kanahaya beat the Oilers. That's not it. But for us, we were able to put up a fight, entertain our fans, and show that we do have a quality league over here.
That's awesome. What was it like living with the Nuge?
He was young, so he was a quiet kid. You know, we're teaching him how to do his laundry and stuff like that. He unfortunately, I couldn't turn him into a hunter, but he's a very, very quality human being. That's one thing that I could tell instantly from him, was that he was salt of the earth kind of guy, given an unbelievable skill set in the game, and he was going to be around for a while because he wasn't going to waste it.
I love it. He seems like a good person. Like, I don't obviously know too much, but yeah, he seems like a stand-up guy.
Yeah, he's an awesome dude.
So this was one of the most common questions when I asked some of my people that were fans of you, and it was like, I thought, couldn't you come up with better questions? But this is what it was. What are 3 differences in playing in Europe versus playing in North America?
Well, the biggest one is the size of the ice. And that kind of leads into a whole bunch of other differences. But, there's a lot more time and space. You add a few meters to the width, and it totally changes the distance behind the net and outside the dots. It just changes the dynamic of the game. And I think people saw that when Connor was here. Connor loves to play on the walls, and he can beat people wide and then cut to the net. But here, when he was on the walls and he was trying to cut to the net, that was a whole nother, say, 10 meters where our defense know that they just have to stay on the dot line and ride him back, and that doesn't allow him to get to the net. And without a doubt, he would learn the game extremely well and use that extra space to his advantage, but not in the one time that he had it. It was just way too much space. It's less physical. I think that has to do with less space too. More space. Guys, just it's another 2-3 strides to hit someone. You're out of position. It's not part of the game over here. Add that to fighting. We might see 3-4 fights a year, and it's mostly just North American guys fighting each other. And then the other thing is the crowd. They're soccer fans. They stand up the whole time. They're shouting. They're chanting. They have songs for different guys, and it's fun to play in front of when it's full. We unfortunately have like 19,000 person stadium, and we'll get 13,000, so it can feel a little empty, but when that place is rocking, it's loud.
Have you ever been able to ham it up with the fans?
Yeah, quite a bit.
Nice.
Kind of the same interactions with these fans as Edmonton. They're a lot more shy over here, and a lot more, they don't care as much about I'm not going to say that. The ones that care have insane passion, but there's not as many. The 19,000 people, we might have 4 times that in fans. Whereas Edmonton, you get 19,000 people, but you have 1.5 million fans. So there's not as many to bump into and interact and all that. So I'd say just because of those numbers, there's fewer interactions.
Makes sense. So I think I've seen in a picture that you have at least one tattoo. Am I correct?
I have a few.
All right.
Yeah.
Tell us about them.
No, 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah, I started out with the family name on my back, just the Jones in the Old English script, which turned into the full family crest, which both my brother and I have. It's like the Welsh family Jones crest. My grandfather used to have that picture framed in his house, and it was something that he was just super proud of. He was proud to have the name and have come over from Wales, and for us it was just a great way to have that family on us. Let's call it a half sleeve. I call it kind of my Christian sleeve. I got a cross with wings, and then Matthew 17:20 scripture underneath, because I know you're going to ask me what it is. It's the mustard seed quote. And if you don't know what that is, then it's because you have so little faith. I tell you the truth. If you tell this mountain to move from here to there, it will. Nothing's impossible for you. And that's my favorite scripture, just because in the Christian belief, it kind of lays it out there. Like, if you have the belief, then nothing is impossible for you. But outside of that, just in general, like, if you have belief in something strong enough, then whatever that is won't be impossible for you. And I try not to push too much religion, but I have that tattoo just so that when people see me, if they see me in a short sleeve or whatever, they understand that I have those beliefs in me. And then I have 2 ankle ones. I have the Trinity, which is the 3 phases of God, Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Left ankle is the ichthus fish. That's the Jesus Greek fish. And then on my inside right bicep, I have the seal for where I went to school, the Miami University seal, just because that was a big part of my life. That was 4 years where, I met my wife, I got a degree, I played some amazing hockey, made some amazing friends. So yeah, I think, that's all of it.
That's awesome. And it actually ties into like
Yeah.
something that inspired me when I was younger and looking to get a tattoo was I thought about some of the people that I looked up to, and you were one of them. So that's an exciting part of you being on my podcast. But I had seen your tattoo with the script on your arm, and it's cool because I couldn't really make out what it said. But ironically, what I got on my arm, it's not the same thing. I'll pop that balloon right away. But it's a Terry Fox quote, and it's "I know that
Cool.
you can do the impossible." And just hearing what yours said, I was like, "Holy shit!" Like I got it close. I was close. And just to make it look cool, I got it done in the Elvish font, but just English writing, so it just has that like look to it. But neat.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think for me, tattoos have always been like, one, they're a reminder to yourself, but also it's to show people without everybody having to ask you all the time what you believe, what drives you, whatever. That kind of shows them a piece. And if they see your tattoo, they're like, holy, that's one motivate mofo. Like, this guy, he's got some heart.
Yeah, and I really respect like your reasoning and your choices for your pieces. So that's awesome and like a fun fact that a lot of fans might not know about.
Yeah, I don't usually peel my shirt off around too many fans. I don't want them to think that that's what hockey players look like.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Very, very fair. All right, so we're going to the finisher question, and I'm sure you've caught on what it is. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So, if you were to give one piece of advice to our listeners on how to authentically live your life to the fullest, what would that piece of advice be?
I guess for me, it would be, I want to know what? I was thinking, I've heard it before on your podcast, but I would have to say just to be you, but not only be you, but be the best you. Don't allow other people to push you in a direction that maybe you're not wanting to go. For me, it's totally okay to allow people to help you and push you in a direction that's going to make you a better person. But when you truly believe something and when you truly want something, don't allow other people to influence you in a way that isn't in line with what you truly want. And at the same time, while you're doing it, do it to your complete fullest. So that at least when you look back, you can say, I gave it my all. I failed, but I know that I failed in doing everything that I could. And that in itself, I can't stress enough. I failed a lot in life, but as long as I can look back at those circumstances and say that I gave that my all, I can live with that. The scenarios and my biggest regrets are always situations where I maybe didn't push myself to the extreme that I know that I have and failed, because those what ifs, they eat away at you. And sometimes they define who you are when things are all said and done. So yeah, be you and be the best you.
That's awesome advice. Thanks for joining me today, and have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
Yeah.